Hello and welcome back to the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. After years of redefining shock rock and presenting himself as one of rock's most theatrical performers, Alice Cooper returned in 1989 with Trash, a bold, polished reinvention that took him to the top of the charts. Packed with memorable hooks, significant collaborations, and an accessible radio-friendly sound, Trash marked a significant move for Cooper, embracing a glam metal sound that resonated with a new generation of fans. Joining me to discuss this album is my co-host, Mr. Felipe Amarim. How you doing, bro?
Doing great, and you, man?
Good, yeah, very good, thank you. All good here. How are things in London?
Well, busy as usual.
Yeah, yeah, same old weather.
Yeah, exactly. A bit windy, a bit rainy.
Excellent. Cool. Well, as usual, let's get straight into the album. I'll kick off with a few little album details, and then you can tell us why you chose this album and the stories behind it. So as we said, the album is Trash by Alice Cooper, that was released July 25th, 1989, recorded between May and June of the same year. Now, the studios it was recorded in were all over New York. There's about 10 different studios, so I'm not going to list them all. For studios, I've gone with studios in New York. The genre, well, the main one associated with it is glam metal, but I'm sure we can actually discuss this further. It's just over 40 minutes in length and was released by Epic label, and the producer was Desmond Child. So let's get started. Quick little terms and conditions before. If you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, make sure you scroll down and give us a nice review so that we get seen by more people in the chart. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit like and subscribe to stay up to date for more content. So Felipe, why did you choose this album?
Well, I think we had to talk about Alice Cooper at some point, right?
Yes,
one of
we
the
had
biggest.
to get
Yeah, we had to talk about him. But I think my choice would be something he did in the 70s. Really, like I think School's Out's a great album. We could be talking about that one today instead.
Oh, and we will one day. We'll get there.
We will exactly. But I thought we should start from like his biggest commercial success, which strangely happened after 10 albums, something like that. I think this is his 11th album. Yeah. And Alice Cooper initially was a band, so it was when he started. So I want to tell a little bit of a story from the beginnings of the band. And well, basically he started in music when he saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. As everyone else at the time, so everyone wanted to be a musician after that. Yeah. So he had a Beatle wig, and he would play gigs trying to copy the Beatles style and make some parodies of their music and stuff. And then the band went into the kind of horror movie style for the visuals and stuff, and pretty much kind of created this style, I would say. And they were hired by Frank Zappa's label. So Frank Zappa, I think, heard them and liked them and wanted to sign them. And so they cut a couple of albums that were not that great, or not successful. And then School's Out, I think, was the first hit album. And that was it. That's a 70s band associated with shock rock, which I never heard of until I started researching for this. What a shock rock, because it's quite shocking. They're talking about that they hate school, and it's all subversive, isn't it? The whole thing is subversive. It's all about breaking the rules, and it had the whole kind of horror movie concept for the visuals. So yeah, quite shocking for the time. But the band kind of decided to stop for a bit, and it never came back. And he proceeded as a solo artist using what was the band's name, Alice Cooper. That's not his name, so that was the band's name. So he had several albums during the 70s that actually never made it to the top. And I think what is really interesting about this album is, imagine you're like 41 years old and you come up with your best album after over a decade doing music and having had success in the 70s. That's very unusual. I think also the fact that he never stopped. It's kind of, there's some comebacks which are like people stopped recording for 10 years and they come back and everyone's talking about them again. But he was still recording. He never stopped up to this day. He was he stopped touring for about 3 years or something in the early 80s. But he was still trying to make his way back to the top. After several albums, I think he got dropped by the label. And then he got another label. And he just wanted to do something different. What makes this album special is that fact that he was a success in the past. And he was pretty much out of the game for years and years and years. But he knew how to well, maybe he didn't know how to get back to the top, but he found his way using some of the biggest names in the industry. I think that was the clever move he made. Should I just get in touch with the best names in the business? So yeah, let's start talking about the album, how it came about. Basically, he was listening to Motley Crue and Def Leppard and all those bands on MTV, and he thought, wait a minute, because of MTV, all those bands now have been forced to do what I did for ages, which is to create a visual identity.
Mm-hmm.
So no one cared about that much in the 70s. I mean, we talked about Deep Purple last week. It's like, it's not about the looks. It's not like it's just a band on stage performing.
Yeah.
And he cared about that. And he noticed with MTV, the videos became bigger than the singles. So you actually need to do something that's visually shocking or remarkable in a way. And he knew how to do that better than anyone else in the business. So I think he knew that that was still a place for him.
Can I pause you a second just to explain what shock rock is?
Yeah.
So shock rock, just for those who don't know, the general idea is it's a combination of rock music and heavy metal, but the emphasis is on the theatrics of it, isn't it? And how you look and how you come across. And all you got to do is look at the background photo on Felipe's screen now, and you see what it's about. It's about eyeliner, looking quite, I mean, Alice Cooper in particular looked very gothic, very heavy metal, snakes, the leather gloves, pyrotechnics. I mean, you just have to look at Alice Cooper's live shows. He had things like guillotines on his shows, didn't he? Where he would sort of fake chop
like
their heads
blood
off.
everywhere,
yeah,
and
exactly.
balloons and whatever.
So that's the idea. You take elements of rock music, probably, in my opinion, the improvisational side of it, the solos, the bluesy aspects. You take it, you mold it with a bit of heavy metal. Again, in my opinion, the guitar tone, the lyrical themes. That's the music, and then on top of that, you put a shocking look to it. You make it very dramatic. So that, for anyone who doesn't know, that's what shock rock. But Felipe, please continue.
That was a good input from you, because I couldn't really describe what that is. I would say it's like it's the theatrical element of it, which is in some ways bigger than his music, right? Because I've heard a lot about him before I first listened to any of his songs. You know, you see pictures, you see documentaries and all sorts of stuff about Alice Cooper. Maybe you never heard one of his songs. No?
I'd go as far as saying he's probably a household name that people can't name more than 3 songs.
Yeah, exactly.
The general person, obviously.
Yeah.
I think people know School's Out, Poison, but mostly they know, they see the photo that you're behind you, him with his eyeliner and his snake, you know, all that stuff.
And a funny thing about him is he's a Christian dude. Like he's like super into religion also. So it is a stage character, but and actually this like religious side and him trying to get sober was one of the biggest reasons why the album was successful in a certain way. Because the thing is, he said he was really into drinking and drugs and all this stuff, and he just wasn't in control anymore. And he was good friends. So back in LA, he would hang out with the biggest names, British bands, including that were in LA all the time, in America all the time. So he was really good friends with Jim Morrison, Keith Moon, Hendrix. And he said in an interview, he saw those guys dying one by one. And it was like, wait a minute, I don't want to be one of them.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the next one to die. So he reconnected with his religious roots and stuff. And he decided to quit drinking altogether. I think he never had a drink again since he decided to quit in the, I think, late 70s.
Wow.
And that helped him to really focus on the music. But he was really scared of performing live. That was the difficult thing for him, because like he was always drunk, so it's easy to go on stage and be that like scary character.
Yeah.
And you know, it's almost like like a serial killer kind of a character that he brings to the stage, and he was scared of doing that with being sober. He was like, apparently after 3 years without playing live on the early 80s, he went to do his first performance, and he was like running around the dressing room like crazy because he didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to prepare mentally for something once he was sober.
Yeah.
But I think being sober really helped him to come with an album that actually changed his music and his style, you know. And so going back to how he started to put the personnel together for the album, he started with the producer. He wanted Desmond Child, who produced Aerosmith and I think Bon Jovi as well and all those
Yeah,
bands.
he did Slippery When Wet and Permanent Vacation.
Yeah.
Just for listeners and viewers, every episode we do that's about an album, we have a dedicated playlist that's down in the description and or show notes. You click on that Spotify link and you can listen along. When we mention a song, you can go and listen to it and you can see what we're talking about and which parts along with the episode.
And now here's the interesting thing. He said when he met him, he said, "I love what you're doing with these bands. I needed to do that for me. Only it needs to be darker and sexier." So
Okay,
that is the
right.
twist, right? Because he couldn't simply turn into the new Bon Jovi.
Well,
Doesn't have the voice for that. Doesn't have the looks for that. He's too old at the time for that kind of stuff. And you can't just say, I'm going to be like full on glam rock now and just like impress the young girls and stuff like that. It's not going to work. He couldn't be the new Bon Jovi.
Yeah, agreed.
But,
and because of that, Bon Jovi was very accessible, wasn't he? Very
yeah.
accessible. You know, there's lots of similarities between Bon Jovi's music and this album that we'll get into later. But yeah, Bon Jovi was far more radio friendly, and you can't do that with someone that looks like Alice Cooper. And I think he'd be the first person to admit that. So,
yeah, exactly. And if you change, there's always like a danger when you change your concept so drastically that you lose touch with your previous audience and you don't necessarily please the new audience.
Yeah.
So that is really dangerous for an artist. So I'm going to simply deny everything I've done before, and this is my new look, my new sound, and everyone's going to say, well, wait a minute. We don't want to. And then your old fans are going to be, I don't like you anymore. Yeah. So he was really clever to find like that sweet spot where he was still Alice Cooper, but his music could be radio friendly again with the 80s or 90s sound. He wanted to do an album for the 90s. That was the idea. That's 1989. So he knew it was the end of the decade. He wanted to find the sounds that would kind of last for the next decade. So Desmond Child was like the key figure in this album, because he's not only a producer. Most producers, they're going to find the right sound, help the band with arrangements and structures and tempos and all that stuff, but he was also a songwriter. So he co-wrote most of the songs, I think, in the album.
He did, yeah.
And I think I want to mix two topics here. We want to talk about the guests. I think that's part of the album. Let's just talk about the special guests at the same time.
What job does? Well, you want to do the guests now?
Yeah, well, all at the same time.
Yeah, sure. Why don't we just make this a big mishmash of an episode? Let's just talk about everything on because we're joking, but
we have a script for the episode, but so very often we just get.
Let's go behind the scenes here. Let's let them know what we do. We do our research and we kind of have different categories that we want to talk about, and we might go from one to the other. So we'll talk about the artist, then maybe the album, then how it's sold, then its innovative techniques or whatever. But let's just mix it up today, because do you know what the thing is that it's all relevant to each other, because every point links to another. And I'll start off with the special guests thing, if I may, just in the sense that and I don't want this to come across as a criticism, because we'll talk about the album and how good it is and what I like about it, but it does seem, or did seem, like the guests were there purely for name value. Yes. Do you agree? Because I listen to the songs that they're on and they don't make them better. There's nothing crazy. You know, when I listen to Only My Heart Talking with Steven Tyler's got like, 10 words in the song, and half of them are just holding one note, and it's cool.
Yes, that one note that only him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Steven Tyler note. Just like the Jimi Hendrix chord. There's the Steven Tyler note.
It's just that one note, but no one else can do it.
If you take Steven Tyler out, the song is not any worse. And the same way in all the other tracks that feature all the other guests. You know, Richie Sambora's in there on Hell Is Living Without You. You've got Steve Lukather on Hell Is Without You as well. The guitar playing on those songs are not better than the rest of the album just because it's Richie Sambora. Yeah. So it seems to me that, and also, sorry, just to add, I was reading that Aerosmith were also in a sense of resurgence at this time as well. They had a little break and they were coming back towards the end of the 80s. So I wonder if it's been a bit of a symbiotic relationship here. Desmond Child, who has done work for Bon Jovi and Aerosmith, has been like, guys, listen, Alice is doing a new album. He's kind of going a bit more towards the glam metal side. He needs a bit of help making it relevant. Do you guys want to come on and guest on a few songs? And like I said, the performances, there's no problem with them. I just don't think they make it better. But at the same time, they
Exactly.
don't make it
It's
worse.
almost, for me, it's almost like they work as session musicians in the album.
Yeah,
Do you know, like, so you have
it's a
Bon
bit
Jovi in
odd.
a song, but he's actually doing BVs
Yeah,
pretty much. He's not the, he's not the lead singer. That's what the other thing I think was clever about this. Imagine you come up with this album, the comeback album, and the biggest hit in the album has someone else doing lead vocals. So I think he was really, really clever, really careful with this sort of stuff. Like, he wanted those big names there, but they never took the spotlight away from him at any point in the album.
It's like they
and I
got the
think it's
memo,
good to
isn't
have
it?
them. Like, they do contribute, but as I said to you, they contribute as much as any band member would contribute, as much as the bassist or the drummer in the album. It's not like they're not guests as people do in modern music, when you need to have a big name releasing a single with you, and it's going to be like half of the song sung by each of you, but he's not doing that. And I think
it's very much Alice's album. 100%.
It is his album, and I think those guys are there so he could say, look, all these really big names in rock music now, they're all my fans, they respect me. So there's a reason why they're here. And I think he wanted that, like that seal of approval from people who were at the time bigger than him.
Well, also they're in the same genre, really, and they're in the same genre that Alice was going towards.
Yeah.
Maybe not, because this album's kind of a bit glam metal-y, and I don't think Bon Jovi are that much. Well, I don't know. Anyway, that's debatable. But yeah, I just found it funny. You've basically got the whole of Aerosmith on the album. You got Steven Tyler and Joe Perry on "Only My Heart Talking." You've got Joey Kramer who playing drums on "Trash," and you've got Tom Hamilton playing bass on "Trash." So you got like half of Aerosmith have joined it, and like we said, it's just like that symbiotic relationship of trying to help each other out. Aerosmith, like I said, apparently they were building their own resurgence towards the end of the '80s. So I wonder if it's like a little let's swap fans.
Yeah.
Aerosmith fans, come and check out Alice Cooper because we're going to be on them. Alice Cooper fans, go and check out Aerosmith because they're going to be on my album.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a lot of that for sure. And one thing I find interesting about Bon Jovi is he wanted Bon Jovi to sing something that didn't sound like him.
Okay.
So the song is trash, isn't it? The song is singing. And let me find the exact words he said about it, because I find quite interesting. Where is it?
It's funny because it doesn't actually sound like Bon Jovi. He does a good job of mixing his vocals to sound. Change the tone a bit.
No, exactly. So the thing is, I can't find the. Okay. He said I wanted him to sing on something that he wasn't allowed to sing on his own album. So because of the lyrics, because they're much darker, like that kind of stuff, Bon Jovi would never sing a song like Trash in his own album. So that is the rock and roll side of it. That's why I respect this album, because he was like, okay, here's Bon Jovi, that pretty face that everyone knows, singing love songs. I'm going to get him to sing this one, which is like not the kind of Bon Jovi you would expect, but he can do a good job anyway. That's the point. So like, and he's kind of like taking the rock and roll that is inside those guys and just put it out there. Like,
I was just going to say, I wonder if it made Bon Jovi happy that he's like, actually, I get to sing a song about like gothic stuff. Like, why not?
Yeah, exactly. So I think they all loved doing that. And Steven Tyler did an amazing job, although it's like a backing vocalist. Really, you can recognize his voice, you recognize the sound of his voice in there. But again, none of the guests were bigger than Alice Cooper himself. That is like.
Do you not think?
No, in the album.
Oh, sorry.
They were not big. They didn't grab all the attention to themselves. So I think there's no better way to use guests. I'll be honest. We talked about like Paul McCartney playing guitar in the last Rolling Stones album, or playing bass, isn't it? Which is like, it's just a bassist in a song. Don't necessarily have to make the guy the super special guest.
And like I said, I think when you have the guests have to play their part as well. Yeah, and I think people like Richie Sambora and Steve Lukather did as well, because they didn't do crazy solos that mimic what they would do on their other material. They played in keeping with the album, and I think that's important, and a sort of a well done to the guests that they managed to not make it about themselves.
I think the biggest role of the guests in general is songwriting. because that's where the real partnership is. That's what really made the album special, is the quality of the songs. So he wanted them to help him to write hits for the 90s, for the late 80s, 90s. So those guys knew how to write it, but Alice Cooper had his own touch, his own way of singing, which is much darker, much heavier than all of those guys.
Well, let's talk about the songwriting then, because I found it really interesting. Essentially, what you've got is what I defined shock rock as earlier. You have big elements of rock, kind of bluesy solos, the occasional bluesy riff, easygoing chords, mixed with heavy metal, or let's call it glam metal at the time, guitar tones, very polished production, everything crisp and sounding really sort of nice. Backing vocals galore, isn't it? It's just everywhere. I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed the songwriting. Memorable riffs that balanced the heaviness of the tone. I mean, what's that song? Spark in the Dark, the main riff. So that kind of reminded me of Crazy Train. Just as a kind of riff, to get the song going, really keep it. But yeah, every song, Felipe, or let's say every song, most songs had the catchiest choruses I've heard in glam metal. And I don't mind glam metal. It's far from my favourite metal genre.
No, exactly. I knew when I picked this album, I knew it wouldn't be your cup of tea. Well, not even mine, to be fair.
Well, glam metal has its moments, and there are some great songs. But for the whole, I don't really like Motley Crue. Guns N' Roses is a bit hit and miss for me. Those kind of bands I'm not really into. This album kind of had enough of rock, had enough of the rocky side, the darker lyrics, the gothic approach to it, mixed with the sound of glam metal to make it really, really accessible. I enjoyed it. I
think the guitar work throughout the whole album, all the guitarists in the album, everything in the album is just great. Because if there's a song that you particularly don't like for any reason, you will still enjoy the guitar solo. That is the one thing. The solos are not long. The solos are all well written and executed.
Can I read you my points for Hell is Living Without You? Another power ballad that seems very middle of the road compared to Only My Heart Talking. However, the chorus and the guitar solo save it and earn its place on the album. So I didn't think much of Hell is Living Without You. But then when that solo came in, I was like, okay, this is like, I don't want to not hear this solo again, so you can stay,
Exactly. I mean, it's in a way very typical like 80s kind of guitar sounds and solos, but so well played. Now, the choice of notes and the tones and the length of the solos, everything's just perfect. Because again, you can't shine more than the singer. It's not about the guitar, still about this persona who is the lead singer and songwriter. Like there's a great guitar solo in This Maniac Is in Love With You, which is it's two guitars overdubbed, like really cool two melodies, then never clash in a way and sound really, really good together. Although the keyboard sound is like as 80s as it gets, so sometimes the keyboard sound and the excessive reverb on the drums, it's what makes the album sound like a bit too 80s for my taste, I would say. But it's a matter of taste. I think that sound of the 80s has never been used again. That reverb on this snare drum, no one has ever used that much, since the 80s, really.
I agree.
I want to say,
can I just stay on that song? Because I wanted to say there was a great moment here where it contrasts, where you've got Alice Cooper, really his voice is going, there's nothing more that I can do, da, 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 da. And it sounds quite dark, quite metally. And then the next lyric, with like a 6-part vocal harmony, this maniac's in love with you. Just what a contrast that within about 20 seconds you've got this really kind of gothic part here where his voice is doing his normal thing, and then this beautiful like 5-part harmony going on straight after. It shouldn't work, man, but it does. And I think again, we'll talk about it later, make your next point, but I would just want to credit Desmond Child for the production.
Oh yeah,
so we'll go back there, but please go ahead.
I think another highlight for me, in terms of songwriting, I'm Your Gun, the last song, because I wasn't expecting anything good at the end of the album. Sometimes you just have a filler to finish the album, and that's a punk rock song, really.
Very up tempo.
And it sounds a little bit more like what he did in the 70s. So it's a great surprise at the end of it. Heavy, quite heavy, fast, really punchy. I think I like that one a lot. Bed of Nails is another one that has great production and amazing guitar riffs.
Yeah.
So I think if you take the production away, that's why I wanted to talk about the production now, because the thing is, if you take the production away and the lyrics, you have a formula for pop music there, you know, like intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, and then a solo, and then a bridge, and then another chorus, and then the relentless repetition of choruses at the end, sometimes changing the key. All that stuff, if I isolate the melodies and the song structures, I think this is like typical radio pop. There's nothing new to it, but the lyric contents are not like typical. It might, some of them might sound a bit silly, I don't know, but it's not typical, it's not predictable, and the production makes it sound like rock music instead of like just radio friendly pop. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, you mentioned Bed of Nails. Now, for me, I've put very metal intro and actually a very metal song, probably the heaviest on the album in terms of guitar tones. But there's dark chords in there. The lyrics are dark as well, but yet we get another really catchy chorus. So when we just venture off into the, he kind of like, he tests it. He tests the waters. He's like, okay, how metal can I make this? Okay, this is pretty metal, but I'm going to rein it in with a chorus that everyone's going to sing along with, which is really good. You mentioned as well the key changes. I wanted to say that Poison, I know the song and I've heard it before, but I don't know it that well. So when it came and I sort of understood and I was doing my research and I listened to the album, I kind of preempted a key change coming at the end of it, and it never comes at Poison, and I'm so glad it doesn't, because the key it sits in, I think, is perfect for the darkness. Sometimes you hear bands doing key changes, and now I'm really pedantic with this, so maybe no one agrees with me about what I'm about to say. If I love a song, it's because I love the key it's in. I'm going to see one of my favourite bands on Saturday, and unfortunately, well, I say unfortunately, it's going to be amazing. They're playing one of my favourite albums in full, but the album was from 2005, and they play it a step down for the singer's voice. So I love the original album because they play it in a drop D tuning, but actually when I see it on Saturday, it's going to be a drop C tuning because they move the whole guitar down. So I'm not going to get to hear it the way I want. I'm still going to love it because it's the songs I love, it's the riffs I love, but I'm very pedantic about this.
It does change the song a lot if you change the key.
Doesn't it? I'm glad
also,
you agree.
I think a key change, let's say a key change in the middle of a song, because the song changes completely. If you have a 2-part song and the second part's totally different and there has a different key, I like that.
But
fine. When you just repeat exactly what just happened, half step above, it's like, oh, come on.
I completely agree.
I find that like that tool
cheesy.
Of production too cheesy and so predictable.
And I agree with you. When you're talking about prog rock, prog metal, that classical music changes key all over the place.
Yeah.
But it's because you're moving into the next section. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you just go, well, I call it the Eurovision treatment, because there's always a key change at the end. Because I got a checklist when we do Eurovision with my family. We're sat there and like, oh, Bulgaria, they're gonna have a key change, yes or no? No, oh, they did. There you go. You know, but the interesting thing is that I hate them. I hate key changes at the end for the sake of it. So when Poison happened and there wasn't a key change, it sounds like a key change, but all that's happening is another vocal comes in and sings a harmony louder. So you think something's different about this chorus to the last chorus, and there is something different. But I'm sat there thinking, thank God they didn't change it. But then in Spark in the Dark, they do put a key change in, and it works. Right, at the end, in the final chorus. And my point is, when I went off about my talking about my preferences, sometimes the song is in a key that works for the song, and you're sat there and yeah, this melody's great. The key it's in is fantastic. And then for the sake of employing that cheesy technique that you mentioned, they'll be like, oh, what should we do? Key change up half a step? Let's do it. And sometimes the key it goes up to works less. And I think, why have you done that? Because it doesn't sound better. If you're going to employ a key change in that sense, make it triumphant, make it even bigger than what it was before. Spark in the Dark does that, I think. I think the key it moves up to for that final chorus works. And I'm just glad that he doesn't do it all the time. And in songs like Poison, for little pedantics like me, The key it starts and stays in works beautifully the whole way through,
Yeah.
and he doesn't need to change it. Spark in the Dark starts and stays in a brilliant key, and then the key it goes to works even better just to polish it off. Really tasteful. And again, this must
That's
be...
one of the best songs in the albums, and in terms
Which
of
one?
like Spark in the Dark. I think it was
100%.
the first song I've listened to the album that was like, wow, this is catchy. I like it. And it's heavy. It's heavy, you know.
Yeah. The first two
heavy
songs are brilliant. I mean, the first three songs are brilliant.
Yeah.
I thought
but
House
Poison
of Fire...
for me is like too much like radio stuff in a way. It was clearly designed to be a hit. Well, Spark in the Dark, things go. No, I like Poison. It's a good song, but it's
I think
also Poison
song.
has the theme of drug addiction, which is it's you got to talk if you want to talk about that and you want to be on MTV. You got to disguise the subject somehow.
Yeah.
So it's about, you know, it's like him as is pretending to be addicted to a woman, but it's about drugs, which is very obvious in a way, but you know, it was done in a clever way for sure.
I think let's talk about Poison for a bit, because it is like the most famous song on the album, the hit. The opening riff is brilliant, and just so you kind of, you know, it sits in between metal and rock. It's fantastic. It's kind of rocky enough that you're like, okay, well, this reminds me of a Wolfmother song. And then it's also metally enough that it kind of has that crazy train, you know, it kind of just has those intervals in the guitar playing that you're kind of sat there saying, well, this ticks loads of boxes. But then after that, I thought how interesting and fascinating that the first verse of this comeback album is so quiet and low in dynamics and so empty.
Yeah.
Because it comes down and there's nothing, is there? It's just a slow drum beat. Your touch. Da, da. It like really, it's not interesting. And then suddenly he goes, you're thrilled. Da, da. And then the song kicks in and you're like, oh my God, here it is. And then that build up from absolute nothing to lips are venom, it's boy, it's just brilliant.
Yeah.
Really great songwriting, really.
It is fantastic songwriting. Again, if it wasn't Alice Cooper singing, it could be a pop song. Yeah. I think his voice is always too dark and heavy for pop music. So that's why I think he would always sound like a rock singer, regardless of the production and everything. I think it's interesting that he starts the album talking about addiction when he actually just got rid of it, and is like 100% focused on producing good music, and that song proves that he really achieved what he wanted. I think. I think this. Yeah.
No, go for it.
No, go on.
I was going to say, what other songs do you like? Maybe
well, Bed of Nails is the second favorite after Spark in the Dark for me because of the riff again. And I'm Your Gun, the one I said is the last one. My three favorites would be Spark in the Dark, Bed of Nails, and I'm Your Gun. I do like Poison. I think Poison's great. And that one ballad, the one with Steven Tyler. What's the name of that one?
Only My Heart Talking.
Only My Heart Talking, yeah.
Yeah, that very sweet, very romantic, a proper, like, that's a great example of how to do a power ballad correctly.
And here's the thing. Alice Cooper said in an interview that, you know, he wanted to, well, he knew there had to be a compromise to be successful in the 80s as a rock artist, and that was the smart choice he made, and so did Aerosmith and all those guys. He said the radio wanted disco, and that's it. If you're not doing disco, you're not gonna make it. They don't want riffs. They don't want any of the heavy stuff. So okay, what's the compromise for a rock artist? Ballad. A ballad is radio friendly enough.
Yeah. So
you don't need to go full on disco. You don't need to do, you know, the typical pop stuff that is going on at the time. But if you write a power ballad, then you can reach a new audience. You can please the radio stations, and the rock fans are not going to be disappointed, because I think every rock fan likes a ballad every now and then. And there was something interesting about the way he promoted the album.
What did he
do? Well, you got to say, as they say in America, he was driving a garbage truck, right? We can't say it's not rubbish, it's garbage. So he was driving this truck, going to the radio stations to deliver the album. It's just brilliant. It's like Alice Cooper himself
rocking up in the air.
It's trash, you know. That's it, trash, and he would deliver the album at the radio station. It's just absolutely brilliant marketing strategy.
I
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, just in terms of the songs, I mean, I thought after this Maniac's in Love with You, I thought, okay, Trash and Hell is Living Without You, I don't think they reached the heights of the other songs. And
No.
Trash, ironically, I thought quite bland. Not really much going for it. But other than that, I can't really say I disliked a song. I thought every song had moments where either a cool guitar riff, well, I mean, most of them had catchy choruses, great solos. Um, I don't know what's not to like, especially if you're a rock or a metal fan,
Yeah.
because it ticks boxes for everyone. And I think that's probably a big part of why the album did so well, especially as a comeback album.
I think it's only the 80s production in a way that some of those sounds they just don't.
But it's not out of place.
No, it's
As
not out
in,
of
it
place.
doesn't
It
sound any
belongs to
worse
that
than
sort
any.
of time anyway.
Yeah,
Every album at the time would sound like that.
it doesn't sound any worse than anything's out there in terms of the cheesiness. I mean, you said it as well in that song. What's the one with? Oh yeah, the synth in this Maniac's in Love with You sounds really outdated now, but back in the end of the '80s, it probably fit quite well. Who
Yeah.
knows? But let's talk about the production because I just think he's done a great job, hasn't he? Desmond Child, he is known for his hit making. He's known for this kind of music. So who else are you going to get him to do it? Like, it's perfect. The perfect marriage. Slick production, polished, clean sound, emphasizing the hooks, the solos, anthemic choruses throughout, glossy guitar tones, driving rhythms. It just it just ticked every box. And I don't think you sit here thinking it's the perfect glam metal album,
Mhm.
but it appeals to so many people, and I think
Yeah.
that's what worked.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's interesting to think that someone in their 40s would be singing to teenagers at the time,
Yeah,
and he made it because the music is good. After all, that's what really counts. You can do all of that. You can have the perfect marketing, the perfect guests in the album, the perfect producer, but if the songwriting is not good enough, none of that's going to work.
shall we give a shout out to the band? So you've got
Yes.
John McCurry on guitar, Hugh McDonald on bass, Bobby Chouinard on drums, and Alan St. John on keyboards, amongst all the guests we mentioned. But yeah, I mean, the music is a consistent thing throughout the whole album, as in it's just perfect. The rhythm section just absolutely
Yeah.
doing their job. As we say, every good album we talk about, I don't think it's a coincidence that the rhythm section are always on it, because
No.
that has to be. It's the backbone of the album. John
Yeah.
McCurry's guitar solos. I think, like, reputationally, he might get lost because you've got names like Richie Sambora and Steve Lukather on there. People might not know who John McCurry is, and I don't know who he is before this album, but you got to give him his credit. The solos on
Yeah.
this album are brilliant.
Oh, he's in loads of albums. He's
Is he really?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I think he got credit as songwriter and guitar player in hundreds of albums. He's yeah. But yeah, so he was working with the
Gosh,
best
you're
best
right.
names in
Yeah,
the industry.
Cyndi Lauper, Billy Joel,
Yeah,
Bowie, Julian Lennon, Joss Stone, Katy Perry. God, he's still be working now.
and think
Yeah,
about that.
he's only 67.
So think
There you
about
go.
David Bowie and Katy Perry. That's if you can work with those,
And Alice Cooper.
completely different, artists, then you got to be good. And he collaborated as songwriter with many of those artists as well, not only as a guitar player. So yeah, so he's as important to the album as Steven Tyler, or actually, I would say more important than the
I'd agree with
famous
that.
guests in the album.
Completely agree.
Because the
Yeah.
riffs are just like mind blowing. The riffs
Yeah.
are great. The one, well, I want to talk about if you have anything else to say about production or
No, not really.
yeah.
No, no.
Yeah, so I want to
Go
talk
for it.
about the legacy of this album. So
Let's do it.
yeah, so it does for me. It does set the pace for the 90s in a way. So because you have this artist now connecting two generations of rock fans, that is the main legacy of the album. You have someone who had the first hit album in 73, now releasing on top of the charts in 1989. So it's incredible because the music, the rock music has changed so much in that time, and he adapted to the new times and the new sound of rock and roll. But he is literally connecting the older rock fan generation to the young ones, also showing MTV how it's done, Because as I said, everyone is doing videos, but I can do them better. I can have like a more shocking look and all that stuff. And I want to mention that another really cool thing. It's his appearance in Wayne's World, 1992. We watched that movie, Wayne's
did
World.
when we were on tour. Yeah, I've only
Yeah,
watched it
there's a
once.
scene where they go to his dressing room after the gig, and they're like, "We're not worth it. We're
Oh
not
yeah,
worth it." Yeah,
that's to him, is it? That's to
yeah,
Alice Cooper.
yeah. So that's him. Yeah, so
Brilliant.
he's in the movie with his band, and I love what they did in that scene because it shows the character, or not the character, but the person behind the character. So they walk in there, and they clearly think, there's going to be girls and drugs and all that stuff.
Right.
And he's just there with his band hanging out and invites them, and he starts talking about history and politics. So like, it's not rock and roll, but it shows what the reality of the business is.
Yeah.
We might think that those guys are like high all the time or drinking all the time and just having fun. There's a lot of hard work to be done, and when you're not playing a gig, you just want to chill.
Yeah.
And Alice Cooper himself being like someone who doesn't drink anymore, who's a Christian. So what's the point? Like, there's no drugs, there's no girls, just a band hanging out and talking about history and politics. It's just brilliant. And you can see the two main characters like, right, like they're expecting something to happen and nothing happens. It's just absolutely brilliant. And I think that's part of his legacy, to be in that movie and to show this other side of rock and roll as a joke, but that's reality. That's who Alice Cooper actually is. And he's not afraid to show that. Like, I'm actually this like a quiet person in my personal life, and the character is something else, right? And I think I imagine how hard it was for him to play the character, being sober and being a different person, So yeah, I mean, hats off to him for that. Literally, hats off. But yeah, so I think the album, just saying, like the single "Poison" was his first top 10 hit since "You and Me," which was 1977. So it took him 12 years to put another song on the charts. I mean, that's well incredible. Done for not giving up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just pursuing with it and just sticking with it. And I think what the most important thing here is in this album is understanding that time waits for no man or woman. And when you were saying about earlier about the legacy of this album, I was thinking in my head, Judas Priest did the same thing, because they were around at the end of the 60s, and they sort of, their first few albums were in the early 70s, and they had this very kind of hard rock going into metal sound from albums like I can't remember what it's called, something it doesn't matter, and then they found their form in the 80s when Iron Maiden and the new wave of British heavy metal exploded, because Judas Priest were like, hold on, we fit this bill. And they kind of tailored their sound a little bit to fit in with that punky new wave of British heavy metal sound, but they didn't lose what made them at the start. And arguably their biggest albums came after their resurgence. So it's just important to understand that they've adapted. And this is what you have to do in any business, in any walk of life. When it's almost natural, isn't it? When you think about going back to the animal world, kill or be killed.
Yeah.
And Alice Cooper had to make those adjustments and change his sound and embrace something that he wasn't used to, embracing a new glam metal sound, embracing polished production. But he didn't want to lose what made him him, and that's why this album was a success.
I think he kind of wanted to say, what you guys doing, I can do that, but better. In a way,
or different. I can do that, but I can still make it an Alice Cooper sounding album.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, it's not easy to find that spot. When you find the perfect balance between the musician you used to be and the musician you want to be.
I think there was a danger of, as he moved towards the 80s, and especially the end of the 80s, he might have been looked at as a legacy artist.
Yeah.
In terms of like, okay, Alice Cooper did this in the 70s. But now
that guy from the past.
Yeah, let's just look back on what he did with fondness. We'll make it good. We'll look at him. Look, thank you for what you did. But releasing Trash and making it as important and as significant as he did, he made himself relevant. And his next couple of albums after that remained relevant. I mean, rock and metal took a whole other turn in the 90s. No, glam metal died the day that Nirvana released Nevermind. So,
Yeah.
you know, it didn't last long, but he did what he had to do, man.
And he's still touring, like selling out shows all over the world.
Crazy, isn't it?
Massive production,
Crazy.
you know, fantastic band. He's definitely one of the greatest like live acts and in rock music. And yeah, it's amazing that he's still going, he still has the passion for it, and it's brilliant.
Excellent. Cool. Anything else you want to say? Any other stories, or do you want to give us your monologue?
No, I think I want to give my monologue to end the show. I'm starting to get used to this.
You do a great job, man. I love all your monologues, honestly.
All right, so here we go. Felipe's monologue. Rock and roll is about breaking the rules, but sometimes you need to follow the trend to survive. After a decade without a hit on the charts, Alice Cooper found himself rejected by the music industry and fading away as a mainstream personality. But he wasn't ready to call it a day just yet. He had the most powerful weapon in the business: connections. Cooper contacted some of the biggest names in the industry and hired the hitmaker, producer, songwriter Desmond Child to help him to create an album that would resonate through the 90s and bring him back from the dead into the spotlight again. Cooper knew that he had to be a compromise if he wanted to rise to the top one more time. He adapted his music and production to suit the needs of the new generation of rock fans, but he kept his essence intact, with just the right amount of darkness and subversion to cut through the predictable song structures and repetitive choruses. He had Bon Jovi and Steven Tyler singing with him, showing to the world that he was admired and respected by the biggest names of the decade. Poison was the first song written for the project, the first track on the album, and Cooper's first hit in a long time. The album has achieved its goal to put Alice Cooper back on top with style. His voice, his image, and his music have reached out to a younger audience and made him consolidate his success with several generations of rock fans. Legendary comeback for a legend of rock.
Very good. I loved your first few sentences where you were like, you know, he needed to do something and he used his connections. And that's the thing. Maybe, I mean, I don't know if you can definitely attribute the success of this album to the fact that Steven Tyler and John Bon Jovi are on it, but it can't have hurt, can it?
I think the songwriting element of the partnership definitely helped.
Yeah.
More than having their voices in the album. I think it's having their names in it and having Richard Sambora writing songs with him and all those guys collaborating. Because I think one thing is to listen to someone's music and say, I want to do something like that. The other thing is to have the person with you working on a new song. Yeah. So it's like, I want to do a song like you guys doing. Can you come and write it with me? Yeah, I think that's why the guests were crucial to the success of the album.
Yeah, excellent. Cool. Right. Well, anyway, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. If you're listening on Apple and Spotify, please go down and give us a review. If you give us a little 5-star review with a few nice words, it takes 20 seconds of your time. What it does for us is it shoots us up the charts and we'd be seen by more people, and we're going to get more listens, more downloads, and hopefully we'll become a bigger podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, please make sure to like and subscribe so that you stay up to date with our latest content, and share our stuff with anyone you know who would appreciate it. If you see someone who likes Alice Cooper, give them this video and let them check it out as well. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for being with us once again. Keep on rocking, everyone, and don't do anything I wouldn't do.
And as usual, take care and long live rock and roll.